Okay, so I want to start out just by thanking everybody first off for joining us here tonight. This class, of course, is electronic bouts for individual tournaments, and electronic bouts is just another way for us, kind of our terminology for having a computer at each mat, and then you're going to be scoring the bouts on that computer. And the need then, of course, for printed bout sheets is eliminated. So you'll find out, I think, once you run electronically, that once you get things set up and the tournament's running, they run really smoothly. As a tournament director, there'll be fewer things kind of for you to have to worry about. You can monitor, you can make changes to brackets and kind of monitor your tournament. The data entry, of course, is reduced by a lot. So I think I'll just kind of move right into my tournament here. If you'll notice, I've got several different tournaments that I'll be working with here tonight. Electronic bouts run a little bit differently depending on the type of tournament that you're working with. So I'll try and cover them all tonight, and then if something gets missed and you have a specific question, as I said, I'll stick around and answer any of those questions that you have. So I'm going to get started with the varsity tournaments, and this is Varsity Tournaments 101. This is a predefined tournament, and we'll move on to the open tournaments in just a minute. But there's a few things you'll want to do. You'll notice that in the to-do list, there's a couple of new items that you see once you flip your setting for use electronic bouts. There's an electronic setup here, specified period length. There's a couple items. And what you want to do, first of all, is come into settings and make sure that you have the setting, and it's way towards the bottom here. You're going to want to make sure that this setting for use electronic bouts is set to yes. So if it's not, you want to flip that to yes, and that's in fact what adds these new items over here in your to-do list. So if you want to run electronically, first step is to come to the settings page and flip that to yes. And then the other thing that you'll notice here is that this mat assignment depth, I'm going to set to 3. And this is using a call to mat system. So this would be like a bullpen system. So I'm going to be sending bouts to mats. I'm not assigning them to a mat for the whole day like you would in, say, a youth tournament. And a mat assignment depth of 3 means I have 1 on the mat, 1 on deck, and 1 on the hole. I could adjust that to whatever number I want. I like 3, but that doesn't mean that that's what you would have to do. But I'm going to use that one for tonight. Also, and these are all in this item for use the electronic bout setup. If I click this, of course, it's going to open that. But I'm just kind of working through that. When you get to your own tournament, of course, you just want to open that up and make sure you hit all these items. So I went in and I flipped that setting to yes. The other thing I need to do, and some of you may already do this for other reasons, and some of you don't, but I want to set up a worker. And I have to do this to run electronically. So I'm coming back to my setup menu. I click on users. And instead of adding an administrator like a lot of you do, or perhaps a statistician, I'm going to add a worker. And this is really simple. All I'm going to do is add a worker here. So I could put the person's name in, and I just did this really simply and quickly just for the sake of our demo tonight. I just added a worker, and that would be Bob Smith or whoever it might be. My username is worker, and then I just added a password. You, of course, would probably do something a little bit different than that, but for the sake of our demo tonight, I'm just going to leave it like that. I also want to point out a couple things. Of course, we're starting here with our tournament setup. You guys already probably know how to do that. If not, we do have other courses kind of focusing on the setup of all these tournaments. But I'm going to show you just a couple of things. I do have a number scheme that I'm using. And all number scheme is very common, right? If you just want to number 1 through every bout in your tournament. But for our purposes, I'm going to use a number scheme, and I'm just going to say that in this case, maybe I have 2 separate gyms that I'm wrestling in, or maybe it's an upper gym, a lower gym, or something like that. And so I have a lower weights and an upper weights, and this is how I'm numbering them. And I'm also going to be assigning them in kind of a similar way as we get going through here too. And if I go to my bout schedule, you'll see if I do filter this, so I'm going to use the lower weights. You'll notice that my lower weights I have starting with 101, and those are running through the end. And then I started my upper weights with 501. So again, you could number however you want. Number schemes are, we think, really important in any tournament. When you're running electronically, they're very important because some of the things we're going to go through later, like how they show up on each computer, how they show up on the mat assignment display, those are going to be driven by the bout numbers in a lot of cases. So adding your number schemes, which of course is in your to-do list, and applying them is an important step. The other thing you'll need to make sure is that you have your mats entered. So some of you, if you're just running on bout sheets or something like that, you might not even enter mats. There are some cases where you don't have to. You want to make sure that if you haven't added your mats, and you'll see I have 4 here, just of course click the Add Mats button and you can add your mats. We also always recommend that instead of just putting a number 1 here, you put mat 1. And see it in other places. When people see that in other places, then that number has some relevance. Sometimes if they just see a 1, it might not make sense. So adding that word mat, just a simple little tip. And then the other thing, if I go to assignment schemes, this is where I'm going to come to tell our system, tell Trackwrestling, how to send those bouts to particular mats. And so sometimes people get assignment schemes and number schemes mixed up a little bit. Your number schemes are basically your bout numbers you're putting on mats. Your assignment scheme, of course, is how you're assigning those bouts to mats. So a good way to think of this is if you think of a mat assignment scheme as essentially a stack of bout sheets, and you're going to specify which bouts are going into each stack. So in my case, if you think back, if I look at my number schemes, I'm going to try and align these just a little bit. You'll probably already kind of predict that I'm going to have 2 stacks of bout sheets in just a minute. I'm going to have my lower weights and my upper weights. So again, I'm back on the mats page, and I go to assignment schemes. By default, your tournament will have no assignment schemes in it. But I'm going to go ahead and click on Add Scheme. And again, this is essentially a stack of bout sheets that I'm going to create. And this one is, you know, if I was just assigning first available to any mat throughout the whole day, I would just probably add an all scheme here, and I would pick all weights and all rounds. And I would just have 1 stack of bout sheets, and it would go first available, any mat, wouldn't matter who was wrestling where. In my case, I want to do that just a little more specifically, and I'm going to have one as upper gym. Oop. So I'm going to have this stack of bout sheets, this assignment scheme as upper gym, and I'm going to use the weights from my upper gym, which is my upper weights, and I'm going to use 152. If I click 152, and then I'm going to use my shift key, and I'm going to highlight all of these. So I have 152 through 285. I'm going to do all my rounds, and then I can add that scheme. And you'll see that this scheme got added. And it's going to look a lot like my my number scheme, and that's kind of intentionally. So my upper gym, here are the bouts that are going to go to that upper gym. And I'm going to do the same thing with the lower gym. And then, of course, now I'm going to go 106 through 45 because I went through 52 on the other one. And then all rounds and add. So now I have my 2 schemes. I want to make sure I have every bout accounted for. So I'm taking all my rounds, 106 through 45 in the lower gym, 52 through 285 in the upper gym. So again, imagine these are stacks of bout sheets. Now I'm going to assign those in just a minute. The system will kind of need to know what mats they're going to. And the way that I do that is I click on mats, and then now you'll notice that once I've added my schemes on my mats page, I have this new column here. And in either of these, or in any of these I should say, I have both of my schemes there. So think of this as mat 1, I'm going to say I'm going to assign bouts. Which way do I want to go here? So I'm going to assign, let's say, the upper gym. Let's say that the upper gym is mats 1 and 2. The lower gym are mats 3 and 4. So I have my upper gym, my lower gym schemes, and then all I'm going to do is click on load mats. I type load here, and now my mats got loaded up. And the way that I can see that is if I go into my bout detail. So if I click on operating and I go to bout detail, I can see that here that these got assigned to mats. And I can sort this if I wanted to take a look at, well, you can see it here. So 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4. And again, that's how my depth comes into play. So on mat 3 right now, I have 1, 2, 3 bouts. Mat 4 is the same. And then if I go down to, I might not be able to see them here. I have to go and increase my limit to see more bouts. So if my limit goes to 999, and then now, if I scroll all the way down and I get to those larger weights, because of the bout numbers are sorting this way, You'll notice now that my other one, and I can't remember, this must have been the upper gym, but this is my other scheme. These are my other schemes, and I have 3 on mat 2 and 3 on mat 1. So all of my bouts are assigned to mats at this point. What the system is going to do is once a bout gets done on mat 3, it's going to take the next bout in the stack of bout sheets and send it to mat 3. It's going to keep it in order. Now, I will point out on this page as well that if I wanted to switch this manually, I could do this. So if I wanted to send this to mat 3 instead, I could just select it there. I could also assign these manually down the line. And in the case that that comes up is, sometimes you want a particular match to be on a mat that works. The other time that you might use this is if maybe you had an injury or something where a mat's running slow or maybe a mat's running fast. You could move bouts around that way. And whatever you see here, that's the computer that they're going to see. So any of these bout or mat 3 bouts, when we log into that computer on mat 3, these are the bouts they're going to see. So this page is pretty important too to make sure you kind of know what's happening there. So that would be in the situation where we're running a varsity tournament. So those are kind of the basics. A lot of you will be running, and let's say an open tournament, and this might be just a little bit different. So I'll give you a different scenario, just another set of schemes that we can use. So if I go to Open 102, so this is Open Tournaments 102. And if any of you have taken our other courses, you'll notice that these are the same tournaments that we created for those classes. I'm going to go to make sure this is set up. I go into my settings, and I believe this is already done. But again, use electronic bouts, and again, I'm going to use my assignment depth as 3. I'm going to add my schemes now. So I'm doing the same thing again. I'm in a different tournament, but if I go to operating and mats, you'll see in this tournament I have 8. I have 8 mats here, and if I show you my groups, I should have showed you this first. This would be in the situation where this is more of a youth tournament. So now I'm running different age groups. This might be, bantam intermediate, whatever your groups might be. That really doesn't make a difference, but this is more of an age group. It could be a grade type tournament, but I have lots of different groups where in the predefined tournaments, like the varsity one we did, it's really just one, set of weight classes. So I'm going to go back to my mats. You'll see I have 8 mats here, and I want to add my schemes now. So I'm going to add, in this case, I'm actually going to do 4 schemes. I think I might have had 7 age groups there, but I'm just maybe just pretend I only had 4 there, or maybe that's just the session that I'm running or something like that. So I'm going to take my first scheme and I'm going to call it 0405, and then I'm just going to select that group. So I already have that age group, so all the bouts from the 0405 age group, or bantam, or cadet, whatever the case might be, I'm going to use all those. I'm going to go all rounds and then click add. And then that scheme gets added. And I'm just going to add my other 3 kind of quickly. I have 02, 03. I'm going to go 02, 03 all rounds. Select that one. Next one's going to be 00 and 01. I'll pick that same group there, of course. Again, the names don't mean anything other than whatever you want them to mean, and of course I want them to be meaningful and not confusing. So I think to me these make a lot of sense. 98, 99, and then now of course I want to select 98, 99. Again, this is what I was saying. I have a couple other groups here, and you would of course have a scheme for each group, but just for time's sake I'm just going to do the first 4. And so now I have these groups, and they're directly related to the age groups, or these schemes, I'm sorry, and they're directly related to the age groups that I'm working with. And then now what I'll do, again, I have those schemes set up. If I come to mats now, again, I have this new column where I get to assign bouts from a particular scheme. And this is probably a common scenario for you, where you have certain groups that are just bigger than others, and you want to run more mats for those groups than you do for the smaller groups. So I'm going to say that on mat 1, I'm going to pick the 0405, and that's a small age group. Let's say, I don't even know how many wrestlers I have in here, but let's just say for sake of argument, this is a small age group. I only need those on 1 mat. 02, 03, that's a little bit bigger, so that's going to go on 2 mats. And then I'm going to say that my 2000, 2001, that's my big age group, so I'm going to select 3 mats for that one. And my 98, 99, those are, kind of similar to the 02, 03. So again, what I really have here is 04, 05, small group, 1 mat. 2 mats for these guys, 3 for these guys, and 2 for these guys. So I just select that. You can change that however you want, depending on your setup for your tournament. And then I just come back up here and I click the Load Mats button, and I type load, and when I hit enter, now I can come back again, go to my bout detail to show you how this works in the operating menu. And you'll see here that on mat 1, I have my 3. If I select my other age groups, so 0203, you'll see that those are there. This mat, this is kind of, again, on the testing site, some weird things kind of happen, but this bout didn't get assigned because it's waiting on a result from that bout. But I've got those assigned. If I go to my larger age group, you'll see that I have 4, 5, and 6. All of those got assigned there. And that's basically how you do that. If I wanted to manually assign, as I said before, I could switch these to any mat that I wanted to just by using that drop down right there. So that's how you could manually move matches if you needed to. So that's how you would do like an open tournament if you had multiple age groups, different size groups, you want to send to different mats. Another scenario that comes up is if you're running an open tournament, and I'm moving into this Open Tournaments 101 now. And in this tournament, I'm actually assigning brackets to mat for the whole day. So if I come to mats now, and those of you that run tournaments this way are familiar with this page, and I go to assign mats, I've already done this just like you would have done. I've assigned these, across my mats. This tournament has 8 mats, and I've assigned them equally to all those mats. There's no schemes necessary in this setup. Once I assign them to a mat, our system knows that these bouts are going to appear on mat 1, these are going to appear on mat 2, and it's going to run through round 1 of this bracket, then it's going to run through round 1 of this bracket, and so on down. And when it gets to the end here, it's going to come right back to the top and run round 2, and so on, round 3, however those bouts are set up. What happens is, if let's say that I'm working a table, I go to my computer and I'm on mat 2, I log into mat 2, and I'll show you how to do that in just a couple minutes. But they're going to see those bouts for that mat, and only those bouts. And it's actually going to show them 10 deep. That's just how the system assigns them. And they'll basically just click the top bout and work their way on down. So if you're running a tournament where you're assigning your brackets to mats for the entire day, it's a really easy setup. There's no schemes necessary like we did in this tournament, if you recall, on our mats page. And we created these schemes. If you're using a call to mat system, you need these schemes created. If you're using a assign to mat system, you don't need to create those schemes. So really simple setup. Your workers at those tables are going to go right in there, and they're going to see only those matches, that they should see on their particular mat. So that's how you get those assigned to mats. Now the next thing, and this is in our to-do list too, we're setting up right there, specifying the period length. And here's kind of a nice handy thing when you're running electronically, is that as you know, within my different age groups, or even maybe in different rounds of the tournament, say consolation versus championship side, you might have different period lengths for those situations. What our system will do is we'll specify that ahead of time, and when a person opens up a bout on a mat, our system will recognize what those period lengths should be, and then your table workers don't need to make any adjustments. So if it's let's say that my 06, 08s, they're going 1, 1, 1. All those bouts will show up as 1, 1, 1, but yet maybe your 02, 03s, maybe those are 90-second periods. Whatever you specify, that's what your workers are going to see at the table. So really handy, saves a lot of confusion. The referees don't need to remind anybody, and nobody needs to really even think about it. They just get the right bout times. And so what I can do then, and this is how you do this, there's a little bit of setup involved, but definitely worth the effort. I'm going to come into bracket types. So I'm in my setup menu, I go to bracket types. And I'm just going to say I need to do this for each bracket type and each age group. So there is, again, a little bit of setup work here. So if I come here into advanced settings, and there's an item here called period length. I'm going to do this again on each bracket type in each division. So let's say the 06, 08s. I already had those in there. Let's do a different division. Let's do 02, 03. This is what it's going to look like from the start, but I've already done a couple of these, so that example was not removed. And let's say that my 02, 03, those are 1-minute periods. So I'm going to go 60, 60, 60. And I'm doing this comma separated bout times in seconds. Okay, and some people kind of miss that part. but I go 60, 60, 60. And let's just say that I want to run all those bouts that same way. If I copy that, I highlight it and I copy it, and I can Control C, and then if I Control V, and I just move on down, and I can quickly fill that out. I go ahead and save that, and then I come to my next age group, and let's say, for instance, in this age group, I'm just going to go 90 in the first period, but then 60 and 60. And I can do the same thing. I can copy that or highlight that, copy it, paste, Control V again, and paste. So you can set this up exactly how either your tournament, maybe your organization, whatever period lengths you need for any matches, you can go ahead and set that. And so then what I would do is I would run through all of my age groups. Again, always hit this save, and then I would come back to bracket types again, and I would pick my next bracket type. So again, I go to period lengths, and in here I would pick my division, and I would enter those that way. Again, a bit of setup on the front end, but it saves you an awful lot of time. A lot of mistakes hopefully aren't made then once you get this set up accordingly. In varsity tournaments, it's just a little different. It's only a terminology thing that's different actually. But if I come into my varsity tournament, and again, by varsity I was just referring to a predefined format tournament. If I come into bracket types, and this is really common in a predefined varsity type tournament where you're only going to have one bracket type. If I go to my advanced settings here, it's called bout text. The other one was called period length. This is just called bout text, and I can just enter that information here. And you see in this case I've already set this up, and here's an example of my placement matches and all of my front side or my championship matches. These are all 2-2-2, like you would see in a normal high school tournament. And yet I want my consolation matches to be 1-2-2. I can make those adjustments here. I save that, and then those controllers at those tables, whenever they see a bout that's a consolation round 2, it's going to be 1-2-2. If they see any of these other matches, if it's a 7th place match, they're going to get 2-2-2, and I could adjust these however I wanted to. So same sort of situation. It's just in predefined tournaments. It's called bout text, and that's basically the difference there. So again, that's kind of how that all works. So in our case now, we are set up and ready to go. Again, our brackets have already been built. We've got our period lengths. We got our assignment schemes going. And now we want to find a way to display who's wrestling where. And many of you have seen our mat assignment display. That's the display that gets put up, say, on a projector. Maybe it's on a big screen. In large venues, it can be displayed on even like a Jumbotron or something like that. But it's basically the mat assignment display is it's going to show you all the matches that have been assigned to any of the mats, and it's going to be the 3 colors. It's going to be green for the matches that are wrestling. It's going to be yellow for the on deck, and then anything like in the hole or out further than that are going to be white. And I'll show you that in just a minute. And so I'm going to use this Varsity 101 tournament again, a predefined tournament, but the process will be exactly the same. I will point out, though, that in this case here, the Open Tournaments 101, this was the tournament where we assigned brackets to mats for the entire day. The mat assignment display won't really show anything here, so you wouldn't really have a need to do the mat assignment display. Again, these kids all know they're on mat 1 all day, mat 2 all day, mat 3 all day. So just as a kind of a side note there, the mat assignment display is not necessary, and it really doesn't function if you're assigning brackets to mats for the whole day. So I'm going to come here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to this would be the case. I'm going to work from my head table computer like you would be doing, but I would have another computer hooked up to a projector somewhere else that I would really be doing this. And I'm going to enter a few bouts here in this tournament. So let's say that, for instance, I'm going to kind of maybe make believe or simulate that I'm like a round into my tournament. And I can do this on the testing site in my left menu by going to Operations. And if I go to Enter Bouts, and I know that this is a 16-man bracket, so there are 8 bouts, 8 match IDs in that first round. So I'm just going to enter bout results, have the system do that for 1 round. And so now I've put us into round 2 of the tournament, just so some of our data that we're going to look at here is a little more realistic. So to set up my mat assignment display, I'm going to go to Operating, and I'm going to come to mat assignment display. And I'm just going to make this a little bigger so you guys can see it. When you get yours the first time, when you order your tournament, chances are these are all blank, and these are all blank. But basically all you're going to do is you're going to come in here and you're going to specify what you want to see in each column. And in my case, I picked bout number, mat, weight, and obviously those are kind of big things that you want to see right away. Then I'm going to put the first wrestler's first name, last name, and team abbreviation. And then, of course, the same information for wrestler 2. And then I added mat, again, that's going to show up on the far right of the mat assignment display. And I do that sometimes only because sometimes if the mat's way over here and the wrestler's over here, it's hard to see what mat. It just kind of helps tie things together. That's completely up to you. And as a matter of fact, all of this information is completely up to you, however you want to set that up. The other thing you want to do is specify how many characters you're going to display. So some people I see come in here and they put 50 for all these, and that's okay, but what happens is your columns get really wide and then you're not able to make your font as big. And so you really only want to have the number of characters here that you need. So for instance, I put 4 for my bout number because I know I don't have anything bigger than, I might go into the thousands. I don't even think I'd go into the thousands here. So 3 might work, but 4 is a good number. My mat, of course, 5 because I put MAT space and the number, weight, and so on. I put here the first initial and 12 characters of the last name. You could adjust this however you want. I know that my abbreviations are no more than 4 characters and so on down the line. So on a very simple level, I could just do that. I would pick all mats and all weights, but I could filter this if I wanted to. And then if I come down here, you're going to notice that I have other information already added to this. But just to show you what this display looks like, I'll show you this and then I'll go back. So I'm just going to come down. I might save the settings if it were the first time in here. I didn't make any changes though. But then I view the display. And then now this comes up here. You're going to notice I have a bunch of other stuff on here. And I'll show you how I added that in just a minute. But when you get yours for the first time, you're probably only going to see the wrestlers here. And so what we're looking at here is we have a list of our bout numbers, our bouts, in bout number order. And it's also sorted here by on deck status. So you'll see that these first 2 wrestlers are on deck, just as these guys are. And it gives the mat, the weight, the wrestler name, just like we talked about, and then the team. And then here's where I added that mat number here on the other side. So I'm going to jump back and forth a little bit here between the actual display and the parameters page. And I'm going to go back and forth, and this is a handy tip. If I right click, if you're a Mac user, there's probably another way, but quite honestly, I don't know what that is. But if I right click and go back, it's just going to bring me right back to this page. So some other items that you can adjust here. I could sort by mat number if I wanted to. That would be just fine. Or I can sort by on deck status. I'm going to go by mat number maybe. Display, I'm not going to have a limit here, but maybe you only want to just show 2 bouts or 3 bouts. You could do that. This test display, this one gets mistakenly flipped to yes every now and then. If I do this, I'm just going to see a bunch of kind of random data and letters and numbers and stuff. If you're ever seeing data there that doesn't make sense and you think you should be seeing actual bouts, flip this back to no, and that will do it. Again, we talked about how to filter if I only wanted to show certain information. The scrolling, if you have a large tournament where you have more wrestlers that are going to fit on the screen, you can have that scroll where it's basically just going to kind of scroll up the screen. You can adjust the scroll here. I will say that if you scroll 1 pixel every 0.05 seconds, that's a nice smooth scroll. So that's a good starting point for you. Sometimes it gets real choppy and blocky. 1 pixel every 0.05 seconds is a good starting point. I added a margin to mine. Yours will be set to 0. And the margin, if I come back to my display, was only to push this information down a little bit so I could add these items up here. If I didn't have a margin, it would be all the way up to the top of the screen. The other things that we have here, I have a font of 22, which you could adjust and make that bigger or smaller. And then these are the other items that you're seeing that are scrolling across in those black kind of banners. I'm adding the recent results. And that's the reason why I went in and created or simulated the first round of the tournament so you could see some recent results. I'm rotating the last 10 results, and then I'm putting it at 0 pixels. So this will be the banner that's at the very top of the screen. I also added the team scores, and I'm going to rotate the top 10 teams. I put that at 40, which is going to bring it down just a touch. So that's going to be my second one that you're going to see. And then I also added announcements, and I'm rotating the last 3, and I'm putting that at 80, so that's down just a little ways. So I'm going to show you this, and then I'll go and show you where you can add those announcements. Of course, the recent results and team scores, those are coming right from our system. The announcements, you would add those manually, and those are really easy to do too. So if I click this view display, this pop-up screen that I've kind of whizzed over a couple of times, this says you can only display clock and score information if you're running electronic bouts on a local server. What that means is if you wanted on this page to show a current match time and team and individual match score for these 2 wrestlers, the only way you can do that is on a local server, and that's not a real common thing. If you are a person that runs a local server and you're interested in that, just let us know during the week. We can help you out with that. But basically, here's what it is. Here's my recent results. It shows, current matches that happen. Here are my team scores. So this is current team scores, and that'll continue to update. And there went my one announcement. So let's wait for that announcement to come by again, and we'll see what that is. So here's my announcement, and currently I'm saying T-shirts are only $10. Okay, so you can add whatever you want there. If I go back, and actually I'm just going to minimize this, and I'm back in my tournament as an admin. If I go to my setup menu and click on announcements, here's where I could add the announcements. And this is kind of a new feature, maybe about a year ago, maybe not even that long, but fairly recent. I could add another announcement here, and I might say free soda in the cafeteria. I suppose you wouldn't have many people watching in the gym if you gave out free soda in the cafeteria, but at any rate, here's how you could add that. And now, if I come back and I find my mat assignment display, and I come back to the view display, now we should see our 2 announcements scrolling through, and there's my first one, and there's my second one. So you could add different announcements there. Again, you could use with that. You could align this at the bottom of the page if you wanted, and you don't need to use any of these at all, but they are kind of handy. A lot of people like to use those, and again, they're fairly new, and lots of different ways that you could use those for. I will also point out, and I've said this a couple times, but these are going to be specific to your needs. You're definitely going to want to test this out, get your projector out, make sure you test this ahead of time to make sure everything is running correctly. This page refreshes, I think, every 30 seconds by default, but if you wanted to refresh that a little, less often or something, you could change that, or a little bit more often. 30 might be the quickest you could refresh there, but you can adjust those settings as you need. So that's the mat assignment display. Very powerful tool. Makes your tournaments quiet and run really smoothly once you get people used to that. And quite honestly, people get used to it pretty quickly. We see a lot of young kids tournaments, pretty young kids, watching those mat assignment displays, and those kids know where to go, and they get going pretty quickly. So the next thing we want to talk about is how we get our announcer to announce bouts. And with the mat assignment display, it's possible, and a lot of tournaments run without an announcer. Obviously, you have that announcer there to make announcements, but they shouldn't have to call every bout to the mat. So there's 2 ways you could do this. We refer to this one sometimes as the old way. If I go into operating and I go to my bout detail, I can use this screen to have my announcer work from. So I would come here and I would use full names, because right now you see that they're abbreviated. I could show full names, and this will open. You can see the entire wrestler's name there. And then what I would do is I would read this first bout. I would call these guys to mat 4, and then I could use this to mark it as printed. I'm actually not printing them, of course, but it's just, I announced them, and now I know which bout that I've announced. I could sort this, however I wanted to, but this is how the announcer could work. And again, we refer to this as the old way, not because it doesn't work, but just because that was the original way, and now we have a way that probably more people use, and this might be a little bit more effective. And that, of course, is from our mat assignment display. So we talked about this in great detail just a bit ago, but there's one other thing we can do here. I also mentioned that this computer that we're looking at as an example would be hooked up to a projector. It would be a separate computer altogether. But if I'm the announcer, I can also log in and open this up. And what I can do is I can add one more column here. If I come here, and if I come down to this one that says announcer box, and I don't think it matters how many characters, I'll just put one. But then from here, I'd want to be careful not to save this, because if I save it, then every computer using this would see this change. And we don't necessarily want this change on our main monitor where our wrestlers are from. But if I just view it, only I'm seeing that update. And now you'll notice that I have this new box down here. So I would read this, and I might sort this a little bit differently. I might do it by I might do it just a little bit differently, but I might sort that by on deck status rather than here I have it by mat. But once I call this wrestler, and I probably would add the whole first name too, and I could just select one there, and this means I've called him once. And if I had to call him again, I would select two, and I would always know who to call, who I've called, and how many calls they've had, and maybe when they're going to be DQ'd or something like that. And so that's basically how you could use that. So that's another method for you to have your announcer call bouts. And if I go back here, actually I'm just going to minimize it. The next thing I want to do is show you how your table workers are going to score bouts, and that's probably the one of the biggest things. Instead of writing on bout sheets, of course, they're going to be logging into your tournament, and they're going to be scoring your matches right on the computers. So I'm just going to come over here, and I'm actually at the testing page homepage. So testing site homepage. And this is what your workers will do. You'll take that computer to a mat, you'll be connected to the internet, and then they're going to search for your tournament. So I'm going to come here, and I'm going to go TWU, and you would search for your tournament, of course. And I'm going to use this Varsity 101 tournament again. So I click here. Typically you would log in as an administrator, but we're going to log them in as a worker. And you remember earlier we created this worker password, and I think it was worker and password. And you know now why I created such an easy password. That's so I could remember the login information. And so now I'm logged in, so this is what your workers would see. And all they're going to do then is they're going to come into operating, and they're going to click on electronic bouts. They'll select their style, which in our case is folk style. If it were something different, they could select it there. And then I open it up. And then now I'm just going to make this bigger so it's a little easier to see. So now you can see, and this is the interface that they're going to see. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select, let's say that I'm on mat 2. I go to mat, I pick mat 2, and now I'm going to see those 3 bouts that I have there. Let's actually go to mat 3, because I must have used that one before. So if I go to mat 3, here are the bouts that are on my mat. You notice some other stuff at the top of there, and I'm going to get to that in just a minute. And mat 3, the first bout that's up is this quarterfinal bout. I click it here, and it brings up this information. What I can do from here, let's say that this guy is actually supposed to be green. I can come here, flip him to green. You'll notice that both of them change. You'll also see the on deck and the in the hole bout up here. If I need to, let's say that this guy hasn't shown up for the mat, for the bout, I can click on this microphone, and it opens this chat function. I can also get to that chat from here by clicking here. But it basically enters that wrestler's information, and it says to the head table, please call so-and-so to our mat, and it's sent from mat 3. And if I send it, it gets sent right there. And what I would have is, at our head table, I would have, if I go to my varsity tournaments, again, this is my head table. I'm logged in as an administrator. If I come in the left menu and I go to online chat, and I open this line of chat with my table workers, now you'll see right here, here's the message that I just sent. And I can say, all right, my announcer gets on, he calls them, and I say, okay, did that. You might say it differently. And I'm just going to send that right back to mat 3. I could send it to all mats if I wanted, but I'm going to send that. Now, if I open up I apologize for all of the windows that I have open, but if I refresh this, you'll see now that my head table has communicated right back to me. So rather than sending somebody up and taking a few minutes, within a few seconds, I can call the guy to the mat. Head table says, okay, just call them. And he might have said here, go ahead to the next bout, or whatever the case might be. To get out of the chat, I just click on the match and I'm back here. And let's say he shows up pretty quickly and we're ready to go. I start the clock. Starts right here. I can also start and stop it with my down arrow, which I'm doing now. Of course, you can't see me push that, but that's how I'm starting and stopping it. And if green gets a takedown, I click takedown. If red gets an escape, I click escape. And then let's say they go out of bounds, so I stop the clock. And the referee comes over and he says, oh, wait a minute, that actually wasn't an escape. I'm going to give him a reversal. In this central column right here, you'll see this is kind of our running list of scores and the maneuvers and what happened there. They're time-stamped, so I know when they happened. I can click on one of these. I click on escape, and I have some options. I can change it. I could switch, which would just mean switch the color. I could delete it altogether, or I could insert something above that entry. In my case, I'm going to change it. So I click change. And again, the ref called it escape, but he's really giving a reversal. I just come over here and say, okay, that's a reversal. Now you see it's 2-2. The reversal gets added, and we're all set to go. I'd start the clock, and it's a false start, and maybe I stop it. I can go back and just go back to the last time that I started the clock using this little back arrow. I click back, brings it back. I can also adjust the clock by clicking up on these ticks, or I can click down on these ticks, and that's a way to, or I could actually type something in there if I wanted to. And I just go on through my match. So I'd run this through, I'd score my bout. If I get to the next period, or when I get to the next period, I use this next arrow. So I come up here, I click next, and let's say that green defers. So I come and click green defers, and then red chooses top, and I start the clock, and then maybe he gets a near fall, and they go out of bounds, or maybe he even pinned him. So I stop the clock, and then if I ever want to see a summary, I can do that. So if I come over here to summary, I click here, and this is basically your bout sheet. If the referee or a coach comes over and says, I want to see what happened during that match, you can just run on down through it and say, here's everything that happened. I just go back to match to get back to my match and continue on through there. You'll notice that there's blood time and injury time here. You can also do that. At any time when a match ends, whether it's a pin, like we're going to simulate in this case, or even if I go through, let's say for instance it goes to overtime. I go through the second choice in the third period. Let's say it's tied. We'll give him a reversal. I'm not even sure if he was on the bottom. But let's say it's 4-4 and we're going on to overtime. I just click the next. It brings me right to my overtime 1, to my choice, overtime 2, and I go right through. So the period should be all set up for you. Anytime a match ends, I'm just going to come over here. Some people say, well, where's the pin button? I don't see a pin. Ending a match always happens from this result. So I come to the left menu, I click result. Right now the score is tied in my match, so the system doesn't know who is the winner. But I could pick the winner. A lot of times you're going to see that one of these is highlighted. I could adjust the win type here. But let's say that there was a fall in 4 minutes, and I click save result. That bout goes away, and then I would just come in here and click on the next bout. And the same thing, I'd start the clock, I get a takedown, hit stop, always come over to result anytime you end a match. So let's just say this is a really quick pin. I click result. You'll notice that our system assumes that red is winning because he ended the match on top, or he's on top currently. I could switch it if I wanted to. I could adjust any of this. Maybe it wasn't 4 seconds. Maybe it was supposed to be 7. I'm not sure. And then I can save the result. And then that's it. And I just kind of continue on through my tournament. And so there's no bout entry. The table worker or the head table doesn't have to enter any bout results or anything like that. Everything kind of happens right from this interface at each of the tables. So if I come back here to my varsity tournaments, now tournament management wise, if I'm the director, again, there's not a lot I need to do at this point. I'm just monitoring. And the way that I would monitor is in here from the bout schedule. And some of you probably already monitor your tournaments from the bout schedule anyway. So I'm just going to come in here to the operating menu. And if I click on bout schedule, you'll see that these green ones are bouts that are already done. This was one of the matches that I just entered there. And if I need to make a change, so let's say that in this bracket, somebody comes up and says, oh, you have the score wrong or the pin time wrong. I just click to open the bracket. I can view the bracket. And then let's say it's, I think it was this match. Yeah, sure, it was this match. So about 158, I can click on it. it'll open that match. And let's say the winner was right. If it wasn't, I could click on him though. And let's say that that pin was actually in 4 minutes and 24 seconds. And I just go ahead and save it from there. And that's how you update. You'll see that that bout gets updated on the bracket, and I just go ahead with that right from there. So that's how you make bracket changes. The other thing you could also do as a tournament director, or might also do, is again from this bout detail page, if you needed to move bouts manually, you could go ahead and switch them from right here. I could change this bout to show up on mat 2 if I wanted to. So that's how you do that. And that's kind of your tournament management. So again, not a lot to do as a tournament manager. I shouldn't say it that way. We've all run tournaments. We know there's a lot to do. But in terms of monitoring this, just basically making sure things are going, making sure your table workers are doing a good job, and things like that. So that's kind of it in terms of what I wanted to run through tonight. I think that's a pretty good overview. Hopefully you have a good idea of how electronic bouts run. I'm going to open the mics back up here in just a second, but before I do, I did want to thank everybody again for joining in. We appreciate the time that you guys are spending in these courses and trying to learn a few new things, or maybe just brush up on some old things. And we do want to encourage you to take a look at the schedule of classes that we have, because we do have new ones that are getting offered all the time. We'll be adding some more throughout the season as well. So I will open the mics back up now. And then for anybody who has questions, I'll be happy to answer those. For those of you that do need to get going, or maybe you've had everything covered, if you don't have questions, if you need to go, you can just sign out. And again, just want to thank you guys all for joining us tonight. Okay, so as I said, the mics are back open. Anything that came up during our course tonight or something I missed, feel free to ask questions. Again, if you guys have to get going, that's just fine too. So we'll just open it up now for questions.
Got one question on the mat assignment board.
Sure.
If I wanted to simplify it and going down the lines, just have, say I've got 14 mats and I want to go down the line, mat 1, mat 2, mat 3, instead of the bout numbers, where you have bout numbers, just have mat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and
sure.
then do the on deck bout numbers. I mean, the live bout numbers and the on deck and so forth coming up. In other words, all you see is the mats and the bout numbers.
So you could change that within here. So all of this, if I go here, all this information is, of course, driven by that parameters page. So you could take any of these columns out or change it. I think what you might be referring to is how that's sorted. And if I wanted to, if I go to sort by like on deck status, now if I come back to this and I go view display, it's going to show me, and again, I only have 4 mats, it's going to show me all of the bouts 1 through 4 that are up, and then all the on decks next, and then all the in the holes next. Was that what you were asking?
Well, actually, I was wanting to eliminate all the names and all the other stuff and just have numbers running across there.
Oh, sure. You could pull, you could pull that out if you didn't want the names on there. If you just want bout number, then.
Yes.
Yeah, you would just come through, and I'll just use an example rather than wiping everything out. But if I could, let's say I pulled this guy's first name out, and I could do this with all of these, and I viewed it. Now, now the first name is out, so there's no initial there. I pulled that out. So you could just remove all of the names.
All the different things.
You could rename. Yeah, if I pull the last name out, it's probably a little here. I'll just do that kind of quickly. So now you'll see that the names go away, and you could just continue wiping that stuff out where you just have your, and you maybe would put, I don't know, maybe you'd put mat number first. I'm not sure how you do that, but you can customize that. The other thing I'll point out for you guys too is that on this, of course I'm on the testing site right now, so if you have a tournament out there, feel free to mess around with it there and play with it and see if you can get it to do what you need it to do. If not, always let us know. If we might have some tricks that might get you there too. So.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, you bet.
I've
Other
got a
questions?
for you.
Yeah.
Have to run the clock on the computer when you run this?
No, you don't have to run the clock on the computer. One thing that I probably failed to mention here, though, is if I am running this electronic bouts, this is where my dashboard will show. So let me show you this example. I probably should have done this earlier, but in this bout, I'm just going to end this one, I think, and start a new one. So let's say, again, I'm on mat 3, and I click, if I click this bout and start it, so now I have a match running here. I must have, yeah, so that's a shorter match there. But if this is where you'll see your dashboard, and this will actually show here. So if I go to my dashboard, and this is what a lot of your people like to watch, you'll see that I have mat 3. If I don't have the clock running, then of course the time won't update there. So that would be an advantage to running the clock, but you don't have to.
Okay. So.
And if I loaded mats from each of these 4, which I could do, you would see all 4 mats on the dashboard.
Okay.
So yeah, but it is up to you. It's not required. Again, the dashboard is a little more accurate, of course, if you have it running. So, but it's up to you.
One more question.
Sure.
I mean, what's the big issue if you were to lose internet right in the middle of the tournament? Would you lose all your data?
No, you wouldn't lose it. So there's a history that gets saved. As soon as something is clicked and entered, that gets saved to our server, so that wouldn't go away. And then the issue would be, what do you do in the meantime? So of course you need the internet in order to run electronically, but you could go and print whatever you have currently. You could, just run bout sheets, try and get in that way, and then, hopefully punt for a little while and get your internet back up and running. There are lots of ways to run electronically too. As a matter of fact, you could log in with a phone and score matches if you wanted to. The interface is small, and I wouldn't want to do it for a long, long time, but we definitely do have that capability there. But you wouldn't lose anything that's already in, if that's probably the simple answer to the question.
Okay.
If you're running the dashboard, though, how can you see more mats than one?
So the reason I only see one is I only loaded one match. So if I go to matches, if I select mat 1, and I'm just going to load a match from each one. So now that's loaded. And now I'm pretending I'm mat 2, and I load one there. And now I'll pretend I'm mat 4, and I'll load one there. So basically I just pretended I have a match going now on each of the mats. And if I come back to my dashboard now, you'll see that all 4 of them are up and running.
Does it automatically update, or do you have to load it each time?
Well, your table workers will load it. So each time they end a match and they click on a new one, it'll load that new match. So you don't have to do...
So you can set it to head table as long as they're loading it. You'll see what each mat is doing.
That's exactly right. Yep. So that, and again, that's kind of the beauty of having all the bouts getting entered right at the mats. You'll see this go throughout the day. So if we sat here for another hour and I never scored another match, you'd continue to see exactly what you see on this screen. But in a real life situation, you'd have matches going, you'd have matches ending and starting, new bouts would come up, and whatever's happening on the mat would be reflected on this dashboard. It updates about every 15 seconds, so it's pretty close to real time. You don't have to refresh it, it automatically updates. The other thing is down here. Oh, I'm sorry. One quick point. You'll also see the upcoming matches down here, just like people will at home. Some people display this in their gyms too. You'll also notice a lot of people watching this on their phones. So, okay. Next question.
If a table worker saves a result prematurely, in other words, he thinks the match is over, but before the referee actually awards it to the kid, the coaches have a discrepancy and they say, oh, there was a bad time. How would he pull that back up?
If I come back to matches, I could search for that bout number. So I don't know
Okay.
exactly what bout number I would have here, but I would pull it off. Actually, maybe even easier. Was I on mat 3? I can't remember what mat I was on, but I could also go here and go to completed only and search these, and this would bring up
Okay.
any of those bouts that I'd already scored as well.
Okay. And then what would they do with them? Let's
They could
say
open
they
it
had to
back
go.
up.
You
Yep,
can
they
open
could.
it back up.
Yep, they could. It's and so if I click on that and say I've already, it says your loading of mats has already been completed. That's in fact exactly what you want them to do in this case, but that message just alerts them, and they could load it back up. And these are the bouts actually that I pretended were scored
Right.
by having it simulate. But they could go back in, they could go to whatever period they were in, and just pick up from there.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
And then
So
the mat assignment would then fall back into picking up the rest of the bouts.
correct. Yep, that's correct. Yep.
Okay.
Actually, in that case, you might see an extra bout. You might see 4 on one mat. I'd have to probably think about that, but I think you'd see 4 on one mat. But you're right. Once they loaded it here, that would show back up on the mat assignment as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions people have out there?
Is there any changes on the virtual clock? In other words, if I use a monitor for a clock, has there been any changes?
We have a couple of new. I don't know how recently you've looked at it, but and for those of you that don't know what the virtual clock is, if I'm scoring a match and I go to the virtual, let me open one. So if I come to this one, and I'm actually just going to start it so we see a different time there, maybe score that. If I go to the virtual, what this is a way to display. You can extend your desktop and drag this over, and it's kind of a solution for not having track wrestling score clocks, I guess, and it's another way to show the people in the gym and coaches and wrestlers score time, that sort of thing. We do have a few new templates or formats that you could use, and I'm trying to think of which one it is. I think it might be this folk style. If I open this up, I think it's the black background, right? So there's some different ones that you could look at in here. The black background people kind of wanted because it's a little easier to see from further away, I believe. It's more of the international Fila type look to it. But if I was running this clock, this would update in real time as well. But you see that I added that takedown and ran a second off, and that's what we're seeing here. So in terms of that, it's just the different, I think I got logged out of there. Here I am. There's some different templates here. So other than that, there wouldn't be anything different necessarily. This is the standard one that most people have used with the white background.
Okay.
So, but not a lot. The changes would just be the format here that you'd see, the templates.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else? And I will say too, if there may be some questions you think of later or tomorrow. Again, our ticket system, great way to to get those questions answered. I'll send that video link out. You'll be able to see that. I should have that up and running tomorrow, kind of mid-morning. And as always, you guys can call in and we'd be happy to help you out. But again, if there's other questions now, I'd be happy to answer them.
Can you show me how you got to that virtual clock again real quick?
Yeah, you bet. And that is, that's one of those things. I'm going to close this one down just to show you how we get there. So I would go there from each of my mats. So this is that controller. So here's where we're scoring that match. This looks familiar, right? I would do this on each of the mats. It's in the left menu if I go to virtual. So I click on virtual, and it actually is going to open up, when I do this, it's going to open up another window. And I would pick whichever format I wanted here. So in most cases, most of you are either going to use this folk style one that has the white background, or this folk style Rhode Island USAW one that has the black background. Either way works. And I click open clock, and it actually opens in this new window. And what I would do is I would just drag it, and I actually have 2 monitors here. You can't see when I drag off, but I would drag that to another monitor that would be hooked up to my computer at the table. So at each table you'd have your computer, and you'd also have a monitor that's connected in some way, whether it's VGA, HDMI, whatever method you would use, and then here's what you would see.
you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else that has a question? Well, if not, I think what I'll do is I'll stop the recording and we'll call it a night. Again, feel free. There's electronic bouts. For those of you that haven't used them, sometimes that can be kind of a scary proposition, but once you do them, I can tell you that once people go electronic, they very rarely go back to paper, and that's not to knock paper at all. A lot of big successful tournaments run on paper, but people that run really enjoy it, really have good luck, and like I said, very rarely go back once they go electronically. So be sure to let us know if you have other questions about this. Otherwise, thank you very much, folks, for joining us tonight.